I think the term that scares us the most lately, especially the last few years, is hearing the term lockdown. Now, that is a big term with a very, very dangerous connotation. When we hear that, what do we think of? Well, let's talk about three stories, three things we've heard this week that's going to impact the way you view lockdowns, the way that you go throughout the next coming days, weeks, and months ahead. And it's all based on taking control of you. Now let's jump into three lockdowns that we're going to see over the next coming weeks that's been in stories. Now, I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to do your own research. But I do want you to pay attention to what is coming and how you should prepare. Let's jump into it today. We're going to discuss it. This video is going to be going. It starts right now.
Close your eyes.
Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so much for being here today. If you're new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up. That does help us stay in the algorithm, and we hope that we can share information that is very pertinent to us and important as we try to raise our families in this crazy world that we live in. So let's jump into today's story. We're going to talk about three different versions of what they're pushing when it comes to lockdowns and how it will affect you, because they're going to get you one way or the other, and they're going to affect your livelihood. Let's talk about these 3 points. Number one, civil upheaval. We are seeing more and more of our cities fall to pieces, either through drugs, crime, lack of leadership, or lack of jobs. Our cities are falling to pieces. Just this last week, we had an influencer push something in New York City, and all of a sudden, people went crazy because there was no leadership. There's no fathers in homes, maybe. There's no leadership at home. There's no schooling, and there's no government standing up enforcement of laws that's taking place. The more we see these cities collapse, the more we see that, the more they're going to push for militarizations, curfews, and control. You don't believe me? Look at other countries that are having the same problems. Have you seen Paris, France? For instance, this week, there was a story that came out about the Brazil president saying we're going to be doing more confiscation and more buybacks of self-defense tools. Lula's words were, we're going to ban guns in Brazil. The government will be your sole source for safety. So if we see this civil unrest in these cities and we're not seeing enforcement and we're allowing people just to not go to jail for committing crimes and doing drugs and all this stuff, you're going to see more control and you're going to see lockdowns and curfews take place. I know you saw the story of the guy that he was trying to rob the store, and all of a sudden the owner, I guess, of the store took it in his own hands and they got in a fight and he pretty much got all his stuff back. You're starting to see more civilians, people that are not part of law enforcement, stand up, which is going to cause for pandemonium and polarization and anarchy in the streets. If elected officials cannot do their jobs or police cannot do their jobs and they're letting everyone back out and not doing anything for the crimes that are being permitted, you're going to see more lockdowns in the cities. Be ready for this, and if you can, try to get out of the cities, or you need to start making major pushes of reformation. We've got to change these policies or we're going to see lockdowns in the cities. Our church has lost power, our law enforcement has lost power, our political leaders have lost power, the home with no fathers have lost power. Then you're not going to control the anarchy that's going to take place in the city. So collapse will cause more militarization, which will cause lockdowns. Number two is financial lockdowns. If y'all know anything about Nigel Farage, he was the one that pushed Brexit and had a lot of influence in the conservative movement in Great Britain. You're starting to see banks close his accounts. They started letting him know that he was not able to bank with these banks. If you are banking with these national banks, get your money out of them because they're controlled by bigger powers. For instance, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, they've got so many hands in these banks, and all this movement towards this agenda that everybody's pushing, they're going to impact and influence these larger banks. We're hearing stories from Chase and Bank of America and all this, and they say it's hiccups and we don't mean it, but really what they're doing is telling leaders, people of opposition, that we don't want your money. So if you can't keep your money in banks and all of a sudden we go to some kind of digital currency, which they know everything, how you're spending your money, every part of your money that's being spent, and also can put expiration dates on it, but then you can have another bank or another way to put your money up, then that is going to cause your finances to be locked down. Do you know there's more people on Social Security and government subsidies than ever before when it comes to the populace? If we have no retirements, we have no way to make money, we're dealing with inflation, and we're seeing more money come to the populace from the government, meaning they're taking taxpayer dollars and putting it back into the system and giving it back to people and then controlling it and then telling you how you can or can't spend your money, then you will see your money locked down. The more they push for surveilling your money, the more they push away from bartering in cash, the more they will control. So I challenge you, start buying assets, start looking at precious metals. I tell you all the time, talk to Genesis Gold, which is below in my description. Talk to some gold or silver provider. Make sure you're putting up cash to buy the assets that you're needing, because you can't always trust these big banks. Now, if you have money in these big banks, that's exactly what they want you to do, because then they can control the big banks by all the things that we just talked about. So you've got to look local. Go to your federal credit unions local. Go to your smaller banks local. I promise you, they're going to not buy into this crazy movement as quick as some of these bigger banks. Now, does that mean your money is safe? We've talked about this before. No, your money is more safer invested in food, water, and all the goods you're needing at your home. If you don't tangibly hold it, then you may not actually own it. But if you are going to put money in the bank, please try to stay local, and that way it won't be so influenced in the midst of all these agendas being pushed. On a side note, there's a story that came out that said BlackRock and Vanguard are taking over centralized food production technologies, and they are almost in near total control of America's food supply, especially for the coming future. So when they're trying to run the farmers away, when they're trying to buy these big warehouses or these big companies to believe in their agendas, if they control the food, they control the money, they control the fear, they control the unrest, then they can ultimately control you. So these financial institutions are not only locking your money down, they're also locking your food down. They're also locking the way you spend your money down. And the assets that you have, they can manipulate it a lot more. Be careful of where you put your money, because all of a sudden we see people like Neil Farage who's not able to be banked anymore. We saw this with Don Jr., same way. They kicked a lot of their money out of these banks. Do not trust the national banks, or your money could be unaccessible and locked down. Third, and this is the one that scares me probably the most, because it all relates back to this. Schwab's daughter came out and said permanent climate emergencies will take place, which will make for mandatory lockdowns and control of certain elements of the populace. Because of that, permanent lockdowns need to happen whether you like it or not. So when you start hearing those kind of talks out loud, when they're saying from all these people that are pushing this control, well, it doesn't matter if you like the agendas or not, we're in a climate emergency, quote unquote emergency. Those powers are broadened, and it gives the government more powers to step on your freedoms, all in the name of emergency. So the more we hear emergency, the more we hear sick, the more we hear that we need to go into lockdowns to control and that we're safe. When they put that little bit of fear right in your news media, it makes people say, oh gosh, what can we do? And then there you go. They've got the foothold on you, and you are now going into lockdowns, because they're going to make you drink the Kool-Aid to think that, hey, there's a climate emergency and you need to stay home. This administration was for expanding powers when you hear emergency status. So the more you hear about these emergencies, there's a purpose behind that. The more you hear media saying, well, there's more sickness, there's a new breakout, there's a new outbreak, there's new emergencies coming. When they show you the map and they show you how hot it is, it's no hotter than it was the year before and the year before and the year before, but they change the color of the map because they want to play with your head. If you learn to fear that, then you learn to trust in the lockdowns. It's happened before, and it will happen again. And you know, at least half the population will believe it. So therefore, it will put more pressure on you. And when those emergencies come, your freedoms will be limited. Did you hear? There's a lot of news saying that there is a new strain, a new outbreak that looks like it's going to take off, and we need to start wearing those covers again. You hear that? It's just a little training. A little training will make you believe it, and then all of a sudden we're back into a major situation, quote unquote situation, and you're locked down. What happens when we're locked down? What happens when we're at home? We become lazy, we become less independent, we may not work nearly as hard as we used to. We become complacent. We become completely at the beck and call of our leadership. The more we have these lockdowns, the more your finances, like we talked about, your food, your freedoms, your money, scare tactics, all this stuff starts happening, and it makes you become just a servant of the system. So 3 lockdowns that are truthfully happening right now. People are literally losing access to their funds. People are losing access to their food. People are struggling in the cities. And we're seeing more quote unquote emergencies and outbreaks happening. But what for? Because the more that you are locked down, the more you fall in line to trust what they're telling you. Be careful, be vigilant, see what's in front of you. And I'm telling you, if you don't start living in this parallel society and start looking at freedom as important, and you start standing up to all these people and start standing up for your freedom, we're gonna lose it. Where it starts is back at our home. We need to build a strong home. You need fathers back in the home. You need fathers loving their kids, loving their wife, and being the best they can be. Wives, support your husbands, love your husbands, and be strong women that want to serve alongside your husband. And y'all as a team work together and take care of your family. We need to build our communities up. Our churches should have some strength. We need revival back in the churches so there'll be some power in there, and there'll be ministers and leaders in the church movement that are willing to stand up against the norms that we're starting to see now. We need politicians to have some backbone. But until we start seeing these changes, lockdowns like we're talking about today will take place. And they're going to affect you, your freedom, your money, your food, and all the above. So think through all these things. Do your own research. All I want to do is I want to prepare my family and prepare as much as I can, taking care of every aspect of my life that I personally can, because I can't trust anyone else to do that, and you shouldn't either. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video is just a little eye-opening to you, because I want you to understand it's not going to get easier. I believe we've got a weak populace, and so therefore it's going to make for hard times. And now it comes back to we need leaders. We need men and women who are willing to stand up for truth, also to hold on to freedom and liberty like we have in America. We don't need to be the next Brazil. We don't need to be the next China. We don't need to be the WEF wants and their control and their agenda. We don't need that. We need the freedoms of America, the ones that so many have fought and died for. That's what we need to stand up for. I'm scared that we're losing control of all the elements. We're losing control of the cities. We're losing control of the population. We're losing control of our politicians. And we're losing value on all our money because we're just spending it like crazy. We're going to have a video coming out on finances, but do you realize the government is borrowing and spending on $5 billion a day? $5 billion a day. It's unsustainable. So we're going to see more of these problems until we start seeing better leaders in our homes, leaders in our communities, leaders in our church, and leaders when it comes to politics. Give me your thoughts below. Tell me what you think. Am I crazy? Am I buying into all this a little too much? No, I'm not trying to make you fear. I'm just saying this is reality that we're living in. I don't want to put my head in the sand. Thank you guys for watching. God bless. Happy homesteading, y'all.
All the blue skies fade to gray.